Welcome again to the Safetalk podcast here at the MySafe site at the Elemental Souk. Today I'm having a very interesting guest with me, Mr. Simon Carnegie, the director of Eigenrac. Simon, thank you so much for being here today and spend your time with us, and really appreciate your time and to talk about what it is you're doing.
Well, thank you very much, Sasha, and it's a pleasure to be here and see your operations, your outfit. Thank you for welcoming me here, and especially on behalf of Eigenrac, as a business that's established and been established in this region for some years now, but sort of wider than that has had a footprint here in various different guises over the last decade.
Simon, you and I already had a bit of a talk about what your background is. We talked about your company, but before we start talking about your company, give us a bit of an idea who you, Simon, are. What's your background? What's your expertise? Are you actually qualified to run a company in the safe and security industry?
It's a very good question, Sasha, and thank you. Yeah, and I suppose it's all about for me. It's about a journey to where I ended up, where I am now, as the founder and CEO of Eigenrac. And I suppose you could go back to when I left school, which is going back some years. I don't have enough digits on my fingers to count that far back, but decades. I joined the military very young. I spent a full career in the British Armed Forces in the Royal Marines, and the latter 5 years of which working in a special intelligence space. What did that do for me? That enabled me or saw me working across the globe in various different theatres, from the Arctics of northern Norway to the jungles of the Far East, Africa, the deserts of Iraq, the plains of Afghanistan, all in different guises really. But what I did is I found it absolutely fascinating, seeing different cultures, experiencing different, the whole variety and spectrum of different experiences, as it were, in these places. When I left the military, which was in 2009, following a 24-year career, I sort of looked at what's the next phase, what's the next chapter, and I fell into security, and a lot of people that leave the military don't necessarily sort of go that way, but it was pretty much what I was passionate and geared towards doing. I spent 10 years working for a FTSE listed company as a security advisor across the globe, providing risk advice on critical national infrastructure and projects, particularly in Africa, Middle East, but Latin America as well, and Europe and the Far East indeed. When I finished there, which was about 4 years ago, I decided that I'd been incredibly successful, but I'd been very fortunate in the people that I'd worked with and what I'd learnt, and I'd been mentored through from starting as a risk advisor at a sort of a very tactical and operational level to being the commercial director for the high risk business. So I set up Eigenrac, initially focused in Afghanistan. We had a very good first couple of years, and then I had to pivot very quickly because the situation changed, step back and refocus my business to where we are now, based out of the UAE and focusing into the Middle East. So it's been an incredible journey, a roller coaster, which I very much enjoyed, but I'm still learning. We're still here.
You've just told us about your background. I assume that it is not a one-man show, so there are probably more people working for Eigenrac. Can you give us a bit of a DNA of the people that are working for Eigenrac?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at the 4 pillars of our business, there are different types of people that service those pillars. You talk about the intelligence, IMS, the intelligence management side of it. So we have some very good analysts that are regionally focused. They have an incredible amount of experience and access into various different sources and open source intelligence gathering, sort of capability and analytic capability. So these guys are very much the kind of brains of the outfit. Most of them have been to King's College and got master's degrees in sort of terrorism and war studies, this type of thing. Far brighter than I am, and they provide that. And I find that IMS part of the business underpins pretty much everything else that we do, even if it's not a service that we sell. We like to utilise it as a benchmark that then sort of the platform for the other parts of the business to sort of work from. When you look at the security risk management side of the business, this is very much the sort of risk advisory consultancy side. these are the guys that are a bit older, a bit more long in the tooth, been around the block a bit, they've got experience in Africa, they probably worked in mining, in oil and gas, they're probably former military or former police, because that often provides the very, the stable grounding that we need. They have the ability to, they understand the risk management process. So the majority of them have got, masters in security risk management, those type of qualifications, which is very important, to when a client's doing his due diligence on a proposal that we might put together or a bid, that we've got the right people with the right qualifications on paper to deliver services. When we look at the specialised protective services, so this is picking people up at airports, taking them to a place that might be in a post-conflict environment. So we might use local nationals that have been vetted, that are former military, or we've trained ourselves, or we might use expats that we might deploy. If a client wants an expat, it'll be a Brit or a South African. We use a lot of South African guys, particularly in Africa. And they'll be ex-military. They'll be more from the sort of bodyguarding walk of life, So that's essentially what that is. But it's thinking bodyguard. When people mention bodyguard, they think of a big guy that's stood on the door of a pub or opening doors for people. Our guys are more more unassuming, lower profile, lower signature we call it, but very capable, very intelligent, and able to be able to think and adapt very quickly to changing circumstances on the ground, particularly when we're working in places in the Middle East and in Africa. On the training side, again, we'll probably have someone that would suit the bill on the security risk management side of things. It's a guy that's been probably former military or police, that's worked in across the Middle East or in Africa in a difficult circumstance, on a complex project, but they have that experience to be able to, and if we lean on the former military in particular for this, because the basis of military is having sound training, and there's a lot of crossover and transferable skills from that, so that they're the type of people that we use within the team. And then we've got the sort of back house support, which is very small. So we've got our sort of IT and people that do our marketing, our websites and that sort of thing, and we employ them locally here. They're very, very good at what they do, and they're again the backbone of the business, because everything's what people see and what they read about us online and on our websites and what have you. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavour for the team.
So what types of intelligence management services is Eigenrac providing to what type of clients?
So essentially taking all the OSINT, the human interaction, the analytical capability that we have, essentially there are 4 pillars that the IMS business stand on. And this is in terms of intelligence products that our clients get. The first part then is the descriptive. Okay, so this is where we would outline events that have happened, past tense, in a country, in a town, in a city, in a region, and it essentially is an overview of a situation, and that could be through open source, it could be through privileged information that was collected on the ground. And then we take it to the next level, the sort of second vertical, as it were, which is the diagnostic. Okay, so we've got the scenario, what's happening on the ground, and then why is it happening? So it's sort of answering that question, as it were. The third vertical then is the predictive. Okay, so this is sort of where we would look at it, and we would look at data, trend patterns, analysis, maybe on reporting, and the beauty of collecting information and processing it is you have the data then, and you can reach back, a year, 2 years, 6 months, whatever it need be. In fact, there's a project we're working on in West Africa at the moment. We're doing just this, where you establish and identify trend patterns, and then you can start to predict what's going to happen. Now, none of us have a crystal ball, but trend patterns are very, very useful. You can map it, and clients find it particularly useful if they're, for various different stages of, maybe a construction project or a program that they're running in a country where they need to get an idea of, what might happen in the near future, maybe over 3 months, 6 months of a period. And then there's the prescriptive, which is the fourth pillar, where essentially we can take all of that, okay, the descriptive, the diagnostic, the predictive, and say, right, okay, this is what you can do to protect yourself. So offering mitigating strategies, but then you're kind of crossing over into the risk management part of the business. So that's essentially what our IMS business sort of underpinned itself on.
Let's assume, talk us through a typical approach by a client. Client approaches Eigenrac for a particular project, task, whatever that is. So how do you assess, what's your step to work together with a client to provide a tailor-made proposal to that client? How can we picture those steps?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the problems I get presented with are varied, and it could be something like in Afghanistan. It could be working in a more benign environment where there's an infrastructure development, and it's of such value. It's very high up on the kind of the rating, as it were, in terms of an asset to protect. And a client will come to me and say, look, I have this problem. I understand that you provide risk advice and solutions. And I will just, so it's about listening. Okay, so I will spend, my time is like, you speak to me, you tell me what your strategic aims and objectives are, what you want to achieve, what your vision is. You tell me, how you perceive, your organisation getting to that end game and objective, and what your concerns are, what keeps you awake at night. What are you really concerned about? Because with that, and it's particularly in the initial conversations, I get to understand, one, what they're trying to achieve, but two, what their appetite for risk is. Okay, so what they're prepared to do, what they're not prepared to do. And then I just work with them. I listen, and I think the thing is, there's no such thing within Eigenrac as a solution on the shelf. We tailor our solutions to exactly what our clients need and intend, and what their intended end game is. So it's all about listening. Now I have a raft of sort of past performance and various different solutions I've provided that I can turn to and use as experience, and I learned a lot from them. And as a business, we've learned and we've grown and we've flourished through these, having this experience. So essentially, I'll then talk to the client about where I've done it before and what has worked and what hasn't worked. And it's very much it's a two-way thing, and I look at it as partnerships, and that's why my end game with a client is to become a partner, a trusted partner of choice to help them, whether it be a mega project in Saudi Arabia and designing a security framework for it, or getting them into West Africa and providing them safe sort of journey management, life support for a project over a period of 5 days. It could be either end of the spectrum, but they need to trust me. But I need to understand what they need to achieve and what their parameters for risks are before I can provide a solution. Well,
it definitely doesn't sound like an off-the-shelf solution that you're providing. That's for sure. Given your experience with Eigenrac, are there any unique challenges that you had to overcome by providing service for a client? Is there any particular example you can share with us?
I think the challenges are clients in a more benign environment will want a security solution, a risk-based security solution that protects them, their brand, people, reputation, their assets, should I say. But they want it to be seamless. They don't necessarily want it to be seen. So I find that that's not a challenge, because we provide scalable solutions where we look at the physical, technical, the personnel side of security, and provide a solution that you might not see as seamless, so it enables their operations, and that's kind of a term that I use, that we are a business enabler, and it's seamless, so it can't be seen. So this can be a challenge, because often at the various different levels that you engage a client at, you'll speak to the decision maker, so the director, the managing director, the CEO, something like that. His idea of what he wants to get to will be very different to the person you have to engage with, which is the security manager, whose idea might well be, of a risk-based solution of putting a guard, a wall, and a camera around on the fence. Now that's not necessarily what you need to deter an assailant from that asset. So that's often challenging, because there are two different sort of levels of engagement at the strategic and the operational. But that then you rely on your experience and where you've done it provided that type of solution in the past, and I lean on that to sort of win round the middle management tier, and get them thinking on the same sort of wavelength as I'm thinking on, or what, you know, the Eigenrac way, put it that way, or our advisors and our trusted team. And the team, and I've got to say, the team are, you know, absolutely the backbone of the company. You know, we're a people business. We provide, and we have very good people that provide these services, and they have that experience and also those people skills to be able to understand where they want to, you know, the client wants to get to, and then provide that advice that actually works for the client. So I find it, you know, challenging on many different ways, as does the business.
I mean, it's interesting you're talking about, and I can only assume that the challenges you were talking about are so multifaceted that you have to indeed literally look into each case one by one and then provide a solution. Also, interestingly, you've mentioned cybersecurity, and that would bring me to my next question. How do you future-proof? Are there any thoughts and activities that you're undertaking for Eigenrac to future-proof the business? Are you already preparing for future threat levels that are coming? Like I said, you've mentioned cybersecurity, for example.
We're in the age of information and technology, you know, and classically, and you know, if you'd spoken to me 10, 15, 20 years ago, everything was very physical with security. Technology, you know, has taken over the physical now, and in terms of cyber, you know, that's just one sort of aspect of it. But I look at it as the age of information. You know, artificial intelligence, machine learning, you know, smart city, all these type of things we need to factor in, and you need to be ahead of the curve as to developments in this space, because otherwise you just be left behind. So it's constantly innovating, constantly, you know, seeking more information. You know, you have to be like a sponge. You know, what's happening next. You know, because otherwise your solution becomes, you know, second rate, outdated. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, very much in the forefront. You know, technology is and cyber is a part of that. But I'd like to encompass it into the wider technical space, really.
So, and that concludes our Safetalk podcast here at the MySafe site at the Almanzilzug. Simon Carnegie, thank you so much for being here today, for spending your time with us to explain exactly what you're doing, talking a little bit about the safety and security. So, and maybe one last comment, if people want to get in touch with you, what's your website?
www.eigenrac.com.